Ryder Knox walked into the diner, soaked from head to toe and late. He barely managed a single breath before being fired on the spot, right in front of dozens of customers sitting in silence, witnessing everything. No one said a word. No one dared to intervene. Ryder also had no idea that the strange man he had saved in the pouring rain the night before was also there. The man sat quietly in the corner, silently observing every cruel word being hurled at him. And when that man stepped through the doors of Riverbend Diner, in just a single moment, every vicious remark the manager had thrown at Ryder would come back to haunt him for the rest of his life. But before we get to that part, let me tell you the story from the very beginning. Those seemingly small moments that ended up changing the lives of two people forever. If you enjoy emotional stories and unexpected twists like this, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss any part of it. So, what exactly happened on that rainy night, and why did it lead Ryder to this fateful moment? The storm that night was brutally unforgiving, with raindrops as heavy as sledgehammers pounding against the windshield of the old Ford pickup. Ryder Knox gripped the steering wheel tightly, the sleeves of his white uniform shirt still damp from the coffee spill earlier that evening. The wipers worked at full speed, screeching with an irritating rasp, yet they only allowed him to see a few meters of road ahead. Riverbend Diner had closed late today because a tour group had stopped by at the last minute. Ryder had served them with his usual friendly smile, even though his mind kept wandering to his daughter waiting at home with the neighbor. Nora was probably asleep by now, but even so, he needed to check if everything was all right. This week, his paycheck would be just enough to cover the rent, as long as nothing unexpected came up, as long as the car didn't break down, as long as Nora didn't get sick. Too many ifs in the life of a single father. Ryder sighed and rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. It has been since Tessa passed away in a car accident, years of being both mom and dad, juggling bills and rocking his daughter to sleep when she cried for her mother. Sometimes he wondered if he was doing enough, but he could only keep going. The headlights cast their beam forward, illuminating the rain-soaked oak trees lining the road. The drive home through the Cincinnati suburbs was empty at this hour. Too empty. So empty that when he noticed something strange ahead, his heart thudded harder. A shiny black sedan sat crooked on the roadside, its hazard lights blinking weakly through the thick curtain of rain. The hood was wide open, thin streams of smoke drifting upward before dissolving into the cold wind. And standing beside the car was an older man with silver-gray hair plastered to his head, his black suit soaked through, one hand gripping the side of the car for balance. No umbrella, no help, just an old man staring down at his phone, his face tight with worry. Beneath the dim sweep of the headlights, Ryder hit the brakes, the truck skidding slightly on the slick pavement. His rational mind whispered, "It's late. Nora's waiting at home. This is a deserted road. You don't know who he is." But then he saw the man's shoulders trembling, saw his fingers struggling with the phone screen only to find no signal in this area, saw a human being who genuinely needed help. Ryder remembered the night Tessa had her accident. Had someone stopped to help her? Had someone stayed with her during those last minutes? He would never know the answer, but he knew he wanted to be that person for someone else. He pulled over and lowered the window halfway. The smell of wet asphalt and engine oil drifted into the cab. "You all right, sir?" His voice carried through the sound of the rain. The man jerked slightly and turned, squinting through the water. On his wrinkled face was a mix of astonishment and the guarded caution of someone suddenly seeing light in the dark. "My car died," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "No tow truck is answering, and I think I got lost." Ryder studied him for a moment. The suit expensive but now soaked, the polished leather shoes now covered in mud. Clearly a successful man, but right now he looked no different from a helpless old soul stranded in the storm. Ryder opened the door. "Get in. Another few minutes out here and you'll freeze." Everett Langston stood in the rain, staring at the beat-up pickup, and the young man inviting him inside. Every life lesson about caution around strangers echoed through his mind. Who was this man? Why did he stop? Was this safe? But then a cold gust blew past, making him shiver violently. His wet suit clung to his skin, his shoes icy with water. His phone still had no signal. It had been since the breakdown, and not a single other car had passed. Maybe sometimes people simply had to trust the kindness of strangers. Everett stepped forward, opened the door, and slid into the passenger seat. Water dripped from his clothes onto the worn leather, leaving dark patches. Inside, the temperature was warmer, thanks to the old heater humming at full power. "Thank you," Everett said, his voice still trembling. "You didn't have to." "No one lets an old man melt in the rain?" Ryder cut in, his tone gentle but tinged with humor. "I'm Ryder Knox." "Everett Langston," the man replied, extending a hand. His hand was ice cold, but the handshake was firm. Ryder pulled the truck back onto the road. Rain hammered the roof in a steady rhythm, almost hypnotic. In the small cabin, the two strangers sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence where you're not sure what to say, but also don't feel uncomfortable. "Where were you heading before the car broke down?" Ryder asked, without shifting his eyes from the road. "A meeting out of town. It ended later than expected, and then I got caught in the storm." Everett sighed. "I thought I knew a shortcut. Turns out it was the long way." "GPS lies sometimes," Ryder said with a small smile. They drove through the empty suburban streets, where the streetlights flickered weakly. A few houses still had lights on, but most were dark. This wasn't a fancy neighborhood, just small apartments and old row houses, but there was a certain warmth in how people lived here. Ryder stopped in front of a 3-story apartment building with faded cream paint. "This is my place," he said. "There's no hotel nearby at this hour, and it's still pouring out there. You can stay the night. I'll call a tow truck for you in the morning." Everett stared at him, surprised. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to be a burden." "I have a good sofa," Ryder said, firm but kind. "Better than you staying in my truck all night." They stepped inside, stomping water off their shoes. The apartment was small, a combined living room and kitchen, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. But everything was tidy and clean. On the wall hung photos of a smiling little blonde girl. On the coffee table were building blocks, picture books, and a pink plastic cup. "My daughter Nora," Ryder explained when he noticed Everett looking. "She's asleep in the bedroom." Everett nodded, warmth spreading through him. This young man hadn't just stopped to help a stranger. He had brought that stranger home where his daughter slept. That was a level of trust Everett rarely saw in this city. Ryder handed him a towel. "You can use the bathroom first. I'll find some dry clothes for you." When Everett stepped into the small bathroom, the mirror fogged by steam, he caught sight of himself. A drenched old man looking pitiful. But in his eyes, he saw something he hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine emotion stirred by an act of kindness. Everett sat on the sofa, wearing Ryder's oversized athletic clothes. In his hands was a steaming bowl of instant soup, its aroma filling the small room. Ryder sat on the chair beside him, holding his own bowl, but he looked exhausted from the long day. "I truly appreciate this," Everett said sincerely. "Not everyone would do what you just did." Ryder shrugged. "Just doing the right thing." "But not everyone does the right thing," Everett said pointedly, "especially these days." They were quiet for a moment, the rain now softer against the window. Everett took a sip of soup, then asked, "What do you do?" "Ryder, waiter at Riverbend Diner," Ryder replied. "Been there. Not a dream job, but it pays on time and lets me spend time with my daughter." "And your wife?" Ryder fell silent, sadness flickering across his eyes. "She passed away. Car accident. Since then, it's just me and Nora." Everett felt something tighten inside his chest. "I'm very sorry." "It's all right," Ryder said, though his voice wavered. "We're learning to keep going. Nora. She's everything." Everett looked at the young man, tired face, yet still a light in his eyes. He had lost his wife, raised a child alone, worked tirelessly, yet still stopped to help a stranger in the rain. That was the kind of person Everett hadn't seen in a long time in his ruthless business world. "And you?" Ryder asked, shifting the topic. "What do you do?" Everett hesitated. He He was used to introducing himself with titles, companies, and achievements, but tonight none of that felt important. "I'm in business," he said simply. "Own a few companies. Had a meeting about a new deal today." "Sounds important." "It is," Everett nodded. "But I'm starting to realize that sometimes the most important things aren't the numbers or the contracts." Ryder smiled faintly. "Nora teaches me that every day." They talked for a while longer, small stories about life, struggles, and simple joys. Everett spoke about how he had been so busy that he forgot what connection felt like. Ryder told him about Nora learning her first letter, about how she asked why her mom never came home. When the clock struck, Ryder stood. "You should rest. I'll get you a blanket." "Ryder," Everett called softly. "Thank you, not just for helping me, but for reminding me that good people still exist." Ryder nodded, warmth in his eyes. "Sleep well, Mr. Langston." When Ryder woke, the sky was still dark. He was used to waking early. He needed to prepare breakfast for Nora before school, then get to the diner for the morning shift. He tiptoed into the living room, careful not to make noise. But the sofa was empty. The blanket was neatly folded, and on the coffee table a small note lay waiting, handwritten. "Ryder, thank you for seeing me as a human being, not a burden or a frightening stranger. Last night you reminded me of values I had nearly forgotten. I will never forget this kindness. Everett Langston." Ryder smiled softly and tucked the note into his pocket. He didn't think much about whether he would ever see the old man again. It was simply a good deed done, and life would go on. He had no idea that in less than 24 hours, Everett Langston would walk into Riverbend Diner, and everything would change. That morning, everything seemed to go wrong from the moment Ryder opened his eyes. Nora woke up with a soft cough, her face flushed. Ryder placed his hand on her forehead. Warm, but not enough to be considered a fever. She insisted on going to school because there was an art test that day, and she'd been practicing all week. "Dad, I can draw the horse really well now," Nora said, her eyes sparkling. "I can't miss it." Ryder sighed, brushing his daughter's hair. "All right, but if you feel unwell, you have to tell your teacher, okay?" After dropping Nora off at Mrs. Wilson's house, the kind neighbor who helped Ryder watch Nora every morning before the school bus arrived, Ryder drove back toward the diner. But that was the day the old Ford decided to turn on him. It sputtered, coughed a few times, and then died. No, no, no. Ryder tapped lightly on the dashboard. "Don't do this to me today." Attempts to restart it later, the engine finally turned over, but now Ryder was late, very late. Ryder burst into the diner, past his scheduled start time. His shirt was partially damp from the morning drizzle, his hair disheveled. The door chime rang, and instantly, every pair of eyes in the diner turned toward him. The morning atmosphere at Riverbend Diner was usually noisy, with chatter, the sizzle of frying pans, and the aroma of toast and freshly brewed coffee. But right now, everything suddenly went silent. Behind the register, Vance Kingsley was waiting, the diner's manager, hair slicked back to a glossy sheen, his black suit always perfectly pressed. His hard features looked even colder than usual. "Knox!" Vance called his name, his voice loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Do you own a watch?" Ryder swallowed, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kingsley. My car broke down and—" "I don't care." Vance cut him off, stepping out from behind the counter. His black leather shoes clicked against the tiled floor, each step like a sentence being handed down. "You think your time is more valuable than our customers' time?" "No, sir, but—" "But what?" Vance held out a hand, his voice rising. A few customers at nearby tables turned to look. "You're late. That's the only fact I need." Ryder felt his face burn. He glanced around the diner. Drake Finley, the cook, stood frozen by the stove, still holding the stirring spoon, but not daring to move. Riley Donovan, the morning shift waitress, stood in a corner, her face pale, eyes full of worry, but silent. "Mr. Kingsley," Ryder tried to keep his voice calm, "I'm truly sorry. Last night I helped a man who was stranded in the rain, brought him home. This morning, my car... Oh, that's wonderful, Vance sneered. So you're a hero now, Knox. Very admirable. But do you know what isn't admirable? Abandoning your job for some touching story. Ryder bit his lip. I didn't abandon it. I was only... In that time, we had 3 tables waiting. Riley had to serve everyone alone. And you? Where were you? Playing the Good Samaritan? The customers began exchanging looks. An older woman sitting at a corner table whispered to her companion, "Poor guy." But no one spoke up. Vance turned back to the counter and grabbed a sheet of paper. Do you have any idea how important today is, Knox? Ryder shook his head, a sense of dread building inside him. Today, the actual owner of River Bend Diner will be visiting, Vance said, his voice icy. He's owned this place since last year but has never come by, and now for the first time he wants to see how the diner runs. I need everything perfect. Perfect. Vance stepped closer to Ryder, lowering his voice, though it was still loud enough for everyone to hear. And you think I'm going to let some chronically late, irresponsible guy like you ruin my first impression on the owner? Mister, Kingsley, please give me a chance, Ryder said, his voice almost pleading. Years I've worked here. I've never skipped a shift without notice, never complained. This is the first time The first time is also the last time, Vance cut him off. He pointed to the apron hanging behind the counter. Take off the apron. You're fired. The words hit like a bolt of lightning. Ryder stood frozen, unable to believe his ears. You can't. I can. And I already did, Vance said coolly, turning back to the counter. Hand over the apron, then get out of my diner. Inside the diner, not a sound. The sizzling from the pan had stopped. Even the background music seemed to fall silent. Only Ryder's heavy breathing and the pounding of his heart in his chest remained. Ryder untied the apron, his hands trembling. He laid it on the counter, trying to keep his composure, even as he felt shattered inside. Years of hard work, sweat, smiles for customers, and extra late-night shifts for a bit more pay, all gone in an instant. I hope you find another job, Knox, Vance said with a fake sympathetic tone. But a word of advice. Next time, care more about your job than about playing hero. Ryder didn't respond. He turned and walked away, each step heavy. As he passed the tables, some customers looked at him with pity. Others quickly looked away. Riley stood in the corner, eyes brimming with tears. But she didn't dare say a word. The door chime rang as Ryder stepped outside. The drizzle was still falling. Cincinnati's Monday morning sky was gray and cold. Ryder stood on the sidewalk looking back at the diner through the glass window. He saw Vance laughing and saying something to Drake, looking satisfied, as if firing someone made him feel more powerful. Ryder wiped the water from his face. Or were those tears? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that he had just lost his job, lost his only source of income. And Nora, what would Nora eat next week? How would he pay the rent? He started walking, shoulders slumped, dragging his feet along the wet pavement. He didn't realize that across the street a black sedan was parked quietly, and the man inside was watching everything. Everett Langston's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his teeth clenched. He had seen it all, seen how Vance Kingsley humiliated Ryder in front of everyone, seen how no one spoke up for him, seen Ryder walk out like a broken man. Everett looked up at the sign above the diner, River Bend Diner. He smiled faintly, a cold, determined smile. So this is where you work, he murmured, and this is how they treat you. He checked his watch. Right on time. Everett Langston had owned River Bend Diner, having bought it from the previous owner as a small investment in his vast portfolio. He had never visited, leaving management in the hands of Vance Kingsley, a man with an impressive track record in terms of numbers. But now, Everett realized, numbers weren't everything. He dialed a number. Donovan, it's me. I need you at River Bend Diner immediately. Bring a hidden camera, recording equipment, and get ready to investigate a man named Vance Kingsley. I want to know everything." He ended the call and looked back at the diner. "You saved me last night, Ryder," Everett said to himself. "Now it's my turn." And with that, Everett Langston stepped out of the car, adjusted his tie, and walked into Riverbend Diner. The show was about to begin. The door chime rang as Everett Langston stepped into Riverbend Diner. The midday sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patches of light across the glossy tiled floor. The smell of toasted bread, bacon, and coffee filled the air. The diner was fairly crowded at that hour. Lunchtime customers, office workers, truck drivers, students sat at their tables chatting animatedly. The clink of plates, bursts of laughter, the lively ambiance of a successful eatery. But when Everett walked in, something shifted. He was not the kind of man who blended into a crowd. Tall, neatly combed silver hair, a charcoal-tailored suit, polished leather shoes. The way he walked carried a quiet confidence, unshowy, yet impossible to overlook. Vance Kingsley, who had been checking receipts behind the counter, looked up. His eyes lit up when he recognized the special guest he had been notified about. "Mr. Langston." Vance hurried over, his smile wide, like a manager greeting an important business partner. "Welcome to Riverbend Diner. What an honor." Everett gave a small nod but didn't smile. His eyes swept across the diner, into the kitchen where Drake was flipping pancakes, toward Riley serving a table near the window, into each corner, as if assessing every detail. "Everything looks clean," Everett said calmly. "And busy." "Yes, sir." Vance nodded enthusiastically. "We always maintain the highest standards. Efficient, professional, no mistakes." "No mistakes," Everett repeated, emphasizing the word slightly. "Interesting." Vance didn't catch the undertone. "Yes, sir. I run a tight operation. I don't allow anyone to damage your reputation." Everett walked slowly to the counter, running his fingers lightly across the polished chrome surface. "Speaking of that, I heard someone was fired this morning." Vance stiffened but regained his composure quickly. "Ah, yes. Ryder Knox. He's always late, lacks discipline. I can't let someone like that ruin the diner's image, especially on the day of your visit." "How late was he?" Everett asked, still calm, but there was something sharper in his tone. Vance swallowed. "Not exactly. I mean, maybe there have been a few times, yes or no?" Everett asked directly, looking him in the eye. "All right, maybe this was the first," Vance admitted, voice trembling slightly. "But rules are rules, sir. I can't make exceptions." Everett nodded slowly, then walked around the diner. He stopped at the counter where Drake was preparing a dish. "You're the cook?" Everett asked. Drake Ramsey, a big man with a beard and hands scarred from years in the kitchen, nodded. "Yes, sir. Drake Ramsey. Ryder Knox. Do you know him?" Drake glanced at Vance, then back at Everett. "Yes, sir. He's the best here." Vance jumped in quickly. "Drake is exaggerating, sir." "I'm speaking to Drake," Everett said firmly. Vance fell silent instantly. Drake swallowed and continued. "Ryder never complains, always shows up on time. He treats customers better than anyone, always smiling, even when he's exhausted. This morning wasn't fair to him." "Not fair?" Vance snapped, voice rising. "Drake, you'd better watch what you—" "That's enough," Everett said, not loudly, but with enough weight that Vance shut his mouth at once. He turned toward Riley, who stood in the corner, holding a small bouquet. "And what do you think of Ryder Knox?" Riley, the young girl with neatly tied brown hair and red, tearful eyes, looked down at the floor. "Ryder is the best person I've ever worked with. He taught me everything when I started. He always shielded me when customers were harsh." Vance tried to intervene. "Sir, everything they say is emotional nonsense. Numbers matter," and Everett turned toward him, his stare icy enough to silence him. "Call Ryder Knox back." Vance's mouth fell open. "Sir? Sir, call Ryder Knox back, right now," Everett repeated, his tone no longer patient. "Or do you need me to explain it more clearly?" Vance gulped, sweat beginning to form on his forehead. Yeah, yes, sir. I'll I'll call him right away. Ryder was sitting in his truck, his hands trembling around his phone. He had just called Mrs. Wilson, telling her he might pick Nora up late today because he needed to look for a job urgently. The kind older woman reassured him that it was fine, but Ryder was anything but fine. His mind swirled with images of unpaid bills, an almost empty fridge, and Nora's shoes now too small. He still couldn't afford to replace them. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ryder hesitated, then answered. Ryder Knox? Vance Kingsley's voice came through, void of arrogance this time. Instead, he sounded anxious. Yes. You need to come back to the diner right now. Ryder frowned. You just fired me. I know, but something important has come up. Please come back as fast as you can. What is it? You'll know when you get here, Vance blurted before hanging up. Ryder stared at his phone, confused. Was this some sick joke? Or did Vance want to humiliate him again? But then he remembered Vance's tone, not commanding, but pleading. Ryder started the truck. He had nothing left to lose anyway. Ryder stood at the door of River Bend Diner, his heart hammered. His hand gripped the handle. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The chime rang. Everyone in the diner looked up. Ryder walked in, eyes scanning the room, confused by the tense look on Vance's face and by the presence of a stranger. No, wait, not a stranger. It was Everett Langston. Ryder froze. The old man from last night, the man he rescued in the storm, was now standing there in a refined suit, carrying himself with total authority. No trace of the helpless elderly man remained. Before Ryder stood a powerful businessman. Ryder! Everett smiled lightly and stepped forward. Thank you for coming back. Mr. Langston, Ryder stammered. What are you doing here? Everett didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to face the entire diner. His voice rang out clear and firm. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Everett Langston, the owner of River Bend Diner. A wave of whispers rippled through the diner. Customers exchanged surprised looks. Riley's mouth dropped open. Drake dropped his spoon in the kitchen. And Ryder, his head spun. You're the owner? That's right. Everett nodded. And last night, you rescued me when I was stranded in the rain. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care whether I was rich or poor. You simply saw a human being who needed help. Everett turned toward Vance, his eyes icy enough to cut glass. And this morning, you fired that man because he was late, after a night spent helping a stranger. Vance's face drained of color. Sir, I didn't know. If I'd known it was you. If you had known, would you have acted differently? Everett asked sharply. That is precisely the problem, Mr. Kingsley. You only respect people with power, not people who deserve respect. Vance opened his mouth, but no words came out. Everett stepped beside Ryder and placed a hand on his shoulder. Ryder Knox, you reminded me of something I nearly forgot. In the business world, selfless kindness, unconditional decency. Therefore, I am making this decision publicly. He turned to the entire diner. Ryder Knox is reinstated immediately. Furthermore, starting today, he is co-manager of River Bend Diner. The diner fell silent for a heartbeat. Then, from the kitchen, Drake was the first to clap. Riley followed. A few customers joined in. The applause rose, not the kind of applause for show, but the kind that belongs to justice. Ryder stood there in disbelief. Tears stung his eyes. He blinked them back. Sir, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Everett smiled. You did what was right. I'm just returning the favor. Vance stood frozen, pale as paper. And what about me, sir? Everett looked at him and sighed. You'll remain manager, but from now on you will learn to respect people, not just numbers. And if you ever repeat what you did today... He left the sentence hanging, but the message was unmistakable. Vance bowed his head. Yes, sir. And with that, a new chapter for River Bend Diner began. Weeks had passed since the day Everett Langston announced that Ryder Knox was co-manager. River Bend Diner still opened its doors, still served breakfast, lunch, and dinner as usual, but the atmosphere inside was completely different. Ryder was sitting in the small room behind the kitchen, the office that previously only Vance was allowed to step into. An old wooden desk, a computer, and drawers full of receipts and ledgers. Ryder had never imagined there would be a day he'd sit here, not as an employee being called in to be reprimanded, but as someone with the authority to make decisions. But along with that authority came responsibility, and it felt heavier than he had expected. He flipped through each financial report, his eyes lingering on the columns for revenue, expenses, and profit. Something wasn't right. A few expense items had spiked suddenly with no clear reason. The cost of supplies was higher than average, and some cash transactions were not fully recorded. Ryder frowned and wrote down the irregularities in a small notebook. It could just be accounting errors. It could also be busy. Ryder looked up. Vance Kingsley was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a strained smile on his face. Ever since Everett's decision, Vance had become different. He no longer shouted, no longer acted like he was above everyone else. Instead, there was a cold, icy silence about him, the kind of silence that was more unsettling than anger. "No, I'm just looking over some reports," Ryder said, closing the notebook. "Do you need anything?" "Just wanted to remind you we have a staff meeting. Everett will be joining via video call." "Got it." "I know. Thanks." Vance still didn't leave right away. He stood there for a few more seconds, looking at Ryder with unreadable eyes, then finally turned and walked off. Ryder watched him go, a vague sense of unease stirring in his chest. That evening, Ryder got home earlier than usual. Nora was curled up on the sofa, coloring in a drawing book, her golden ponytail bouncing to the rhythm of the song she was humming in her head. "Daddy's home!" Nora sprang up, ran over, and wrapped herself around his legs. "I missed you so much." Ryder bent down and lifted his daughter into his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of children's shampoo. "I missed you too," he laughed. "How was school today?" "It was great. I got an A on my art test." Nora squealed and tugged him over to the fridge. On the door, her drawing was stuck up with a magnet. A family of 3, a dad, a little girl, and a faint figure beside them, with the clumsy words, "Mom in Heaven." Ryder's heart clenched. It has been since Tessa passed away, but Nora still thought about her mother every single day. "It's beautiful, honey," Ryder said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Daddy?" Nora suddenly looked straight at him, her clear blue eyes searching. "Are you happy?" Ryder paused. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you look really tired. You stay up late every night. I hear you sigh a lot." Ryder sat down and pulled Nora to sit facing him, their eyes level. "As long as I have you, I'm happy, Nora. But are you sad?" Ryder stayed quiet for a moment, then chose to be honest. "Yes, sometimes I'm sad, but every time I look at you, I feel strong again." Nora threw her arms around his neck. "Daddy is the best person in the whole world." In that small apartment, wrapped in the tight hug of a girl, Ryder suddenly felt like the richest man alive. He didn't know that, at that very moment, out in the parking lot of River Bend Diner, Vance Kingsley was sitting in his car, staring into the diner through the dark glass. Inside his mind, a shadowy plan was slowly taking shape. On Wednesday morning, Ryder arrived at the diner early as usual. He opened the cash register to check the previous night's takings, a new habit Everett had asked both managers to do together so they could compare records. But after counting for a short while, Ryder stopped. Money was missing exactly $150. He counted again, once, twice, 3 times. The number didn't change. The cash in the register didn't match the written record. Is something wrong? Riley walked over carrying a tray of coffee cups. She had noticed the tension on his face. "There's money missing," Ryder said quietly. $150. Riley frowned. Maybe someone gave the wrong change last night. Maybe, Ryder nodded, but his unease remained. Did you notice anything strange last night? No. Everything was normal, Riley tried to recall. Oh, but Vance stayed late after I left. He said he had to finish some reports. Ryder made a mental note of that. He didn't want to jump to conclusions about anyone, but... I'll check the cameras, Ryder said softly. For now, don't mention this to anyone, okay? Riley nodded. Ryder went up to the office and turned on the surveillance system. Riverbend Diner had 3 cameras, one on the register, one in the kitchen, and one at the entrance. He rewound the footage from the previous night, starting around when the diner closed. When Emma and Drake finished cleaning and left one after another, only Vance remained in the diner. Vance stood at the register, opened the till. He pulled out a stack of bills, counted them, then stuffed them straight into his jacket pocket. Ryder paused the video. His heart pounded. Vance was stealing. But Ryder knew one recording wasn't enough. He needed more evidence. One incident could be brushed off as a mistake. He needed the full picture. Ryder called Everett, not from the office, but from the parking lot where no one could overhear. Everett, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. On the other end, Everett's voice was still calm but clearly focused. What's going on, Ryder? Cash is missing, and I have video of Vance taking money from the register. There was a brief silence. Then Everett exhaled slowly. Are you sure? I watched it 3 times. It's him. All right, Everett said. Don't do anything yet. Don't confront him, and don't mention this to anyone. I'll send someone down. And Ryder? Yes? Be careful. If Vance senses you're investigating him, he might do something reckless. The call ended. Ryder stood in the freezing Cincinnati morning air of the parking lot, a thick fog of unease settling around him. Days later, a man walked into Riverbend Diner. He was tall, with short cropped hair, wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. At first glance, he looked like any other passerby. But the way he watched everything, the sharp, steady eyes, the deliberate movements, the way he noted every detail, made it clear he was not just a casual customer. He chose a corner table, ordered a cup of coffee and a sandwich. The whole time he quietly observed the way Vance moved around, how he spoke to staff, how often he touched the cash register. This was Donovan Hale, the private investigator Everett had hired. Everett had already told Ryder about him. Ryder knew Donovan was there, but no one else in the diner knew anything, not even Vance. Donovan stayed before leaving, but he didn't go home. That evening, he came back and sat somewhere else. The tiny camera hidden in his jacket recorded every movement, every gesture. On Friday evening, Everett arranged to meet Ryder at a nearby cafe. Donovan was there as well. "We've got enough," Donovan said, opening his laptop. On the screen were a series of videos and stills, Vance opening the register, taking money, altering numbers, changing records, not once, but at least times. The total amount he's taken is estimated at over $3,000, Donovan concluded. Ryder let out a long breath, a mix of anger and disappointment. His salary isn't low. Why would he do this? Everett shook his head slightly. Not everyone steals because they need money, Ryder. Some do it out of greed. Some do it for the feeling of power. Vance got used to controlling everything here. When you became co-manager, he lost part of that control. This is how he tried to take it back. What do we do now? Ryder asked. Everett looked at Donovan, then back at Ryder. We confront him, but not in private, in front of the whole staff. I've already called the police. Ryder swallowed. When? Monday morning, Everett replied. I'll fly to Cincinnati. We're going to put an end to this. The weekend passed under a silence stretched tight like a drawn wire. Ryder kept working as usual, forcing himself to act as if nothing had changed, so Vance wouldn't grow suspicious. But every time he saw the man, his fake smile, the way he talked to customers like he owned the place, anger surged up inside him. On Sunday night, Ryder could barely sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning with scenarios. How would Vance react? Would he confess or deny everything and try to pin it back on Ryder? A soft knock on the door pulled him out of his thoughts. "Dad?" Nora's voice came. "Come in, sweetheart." She opened the door, clutching her teddy bear, shuffling over to the bed. "I can't sleep." Ryder lifted the blanket. "Come here." Nora slid in beside him. "You're worried about work, aren't you?" "Yeah, a little," Ryder admitted. "Because of your job?" "Yeah, that too." Nora was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mom used to say that when you're worried, you just have to look up at the stars and remember she's up there watching you." Ryder's chest tightened. She was right. "She's watching you too, isn't she?" Ryder gave a sad smile. "I'm sure she is." The two of them lay still like that until Nora drifted off, still hugging her teddy tightly. Ryder looked at his daughter and whispered softly, "Tessa, do you see this? I'm trying to do the right thing, for her, for our family." In the darkness, a delicate sense of peace seemed to settle over the room, as if someone were gently placing a hand on his shoulder saying, "Keep going, it's going to be all right." Monday morning was coming, and with it, the moment everything would change. Monday morning, Riverbend Diner opened like any other day. Customers came and went, placed orders, ate breakfast, and chatted noisily. No one knew that in just a few hours, everything in the diner would be turned upside down. Ryder arrived earlier than usual. In his pocket was a USB drive containing all the video evidence. Everett would arrive. The police had already been notified. Vance appeared. He greeted Ryder perfunctorily, then went straight into the office, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Drake and Riley arrived afterward. Drake glanced quickly at Ryder's face and clearly saw the tension there. "You okay?" Drake asked quietly. "I will be," Ryder replied. "Today is going to be a long day." Everett Langston walked into the diner. He wore a neat gray suit, his expression grave and serious. Walking beside him was Donovan Hale, holding a briefcase. Vance, who was standing at the counter, jumped when he saw Everett. "Mr. Langston, I didn't know you were coming today," Vance said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I didn't announce it," Everett replied, his tone cold. "Ryder, call all the staff out here right now." The entire Riverbend Diner staff, Drake, Riley, and 2 part-time employees, had gathered in the service area. The customers in the diner sensed the heavy atmosphere, gradually stopped eating, and turned to watch. Everett stood in the middle, Ryder beside him. Vance faced them, his face gradually turning pale. "I'm here today to deal with a serious matter," Everett began. "Riverbend Diner has repeatedly lost cash in mysterious ways. At first we thought it was an accounting error, but after investigating we discovered this is not an error." Vance swallowed hard. "Sir, what exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Everett said flatly. "I'm accusing. Vance Kingsley, you have embezzled more than $3,000 in cash from this diner's register." The air seemed to freeze. Riley let out a sharp breath. Drake stood rooted to the spot. Vance stepped back, his face chalk white. "That's slander," Vance shouted. "I would never—" "Nolan?" Everett nodded. Donovan Hale opened his laptop and turned the screen toward everyone. The video played. Vance opening the register, pulling out money, stuffing it into his pocket. Then another video. Then another. Everything was clear, sharp, and impossible to deny. Sweat rolled down Vance's forehead. That's fake. Ryder staged it to frame me." "Staged it?" Everett repeated, his voice icy. "Then how do you explain your fingerprints on these bills?" He opened a clear evidence bag. Inside were bills that had been marked beforehand. "We marked a number of bills in the register last week, and last night you were the one who took them." Vance shook his head frantically. "No, that's not what happened. We also checked your bank statements," Donovan added. "The cash deposits do not match the legal income you reported. You tried to hide it, but not well enough. Vance whipped around to glare at Ryder, his eyes filled with hatred. This is all because of you. Before you showed up, I was the only manager here. Then he promotes you, some nobody waiter, and makes me lose face in front of everyone. So that means I deserve to have you steal from me? Ryder asked, his voice calm but pained. I always respected you. I never wanted to take your place. But you chose this path yourself. Vance opened his mouth, but no words came out. The door to the diner opened. 2 police officers stepped inside. Vance Kingsley, one officer called out. Vance turned and saw them, and it was as if all the strength drained from his body. His shoulders slumped. You are under arrest for theft and falsifying financial records, the officer said, taking out a pair of handcuffs. The metallic click of the cuffs echoed as they locked around Vance's wrists. He turned his head to look at Ryder one last time. You think you've won, don't you? You're just some guy who got lucky. Without Everett, you're nothing. Ryder looked him straight in the eyes. Maybe that's true, but I don't need power to be a decent human being, and that you never understood. Vance was led outside. The door chime rang softly again as it closed behind him. This time, for good. Inside the diner, silence stretched on for a few more breaths. Then, from the kitchen, Drake was the first to clap. Riley followed. A few customers joined in. The applause rose, not the kind of applause for show, but the kind that belongs to justice. Everett stepped up beside Ryder and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. Not everyone has the courage to face the truth. Ryder nodded, his throat tightening. Thank you, Everett, for everything. No? Everett shook his head. I should be thanking you. You reminded me what truly matters. They shook hands, not just as owner and manager, but as friends, as 2 people standing together on the side of what's right. Spring returned to Cincinnati, cherry blossoms blooming along the banks of the Ohio River, the rows of trees softening into gentler colors. Riverbend Diner was now a far cry from what it had been ago. Outside, a new sign had been hung, Riverbend Diner, where kindness is served. Inside, the space had been refurbished, brighter, warmer. On the walls were framed photos of staff and customers, smiles, everyday moments filled with meaning. Ryder stood behind the counter. He no longer wore the old server's uniform, but a simple shirt and neat slacks. His hair was trimmed cleanly, and his eyes no longer held that dull exhaustion. Riley sat at a corner table doing her homework, occasionally looking up to smile at him. Thanks to Everett's help, Ryder had been able to send his daughter to a better private school, one where they encouraged and nurtured her artistic talent. Riley Donovan was now the shift lead, training 2 new employees. She was quick, confident, and smiled much more than before. Drake was still in the kitchen, but he now had an assistant, no longer forced to shoulder everything alone like he once did. That evening, Everett stopped by the diner. He sat at his usual table, ordered a cup of coffee and a sandwich, as always. Ryder brought the food out himself and sat down across from him. Revenue is up compared to ago, Ryder reported. More regulars are coming back. We've also gained quite a few new 5-star reviews on Yelp. Everett smiled. I already know. But what matters more is, are people happy? Ryder looked around the diner. Riley was chatting and laughing with customers. Drake was working while whistling in the kitchen. In the corner over there, his daughter Nora was busy sketching another new picture. Yes, Ryder said softly. Everyone is much happier than before. Then that's enough, Everett replied. They sat in silence for a while, sipping their coffee, listening to the distant sound of the Ohio River flowing gently outside. Everett, Ryder spoke up. There's something I've always wondered. That night in the rain, did you know I worked at Riverbend Diner? Everett shook his head. No. Back then, I only knew you were a good man who stopped his car. The fact that you worked at this diner was just a beautiful coincidence. A coincidence? Ryder smiled. Or fate? Maybe a bit of both, Everett replied. But I believe this. When people do something kind, the universe will find a way to bring it back to them. Weeks later, Ryder stood outside the diner on a late evening. It was drizzling again, just like the night he first met Everett. But this time, his heart was no longer weighed down with anxiety. An old car sputtered and died at the side of the road. An older man stepped out, bewildered, looking around. His phone had no signal. Ryder didn't need long to think. He stepped out from under the awning and walked toward him. "Do you need some help, sir?" The man turned, slightly startled. "My car just died. I don't know what to do." Ryder smiled. "Get in my truck. I'll drive you somewhere safe." As the vehicle rolled forward in the rain, Ryder suddenly remembered Everett's words. Kindness doesn't need a reason. It only needs to be done. A short article appeared in the Cincinnati Enquirer. A small diner with a big philosophy. River Bend. Diner becomes a community symbol. River Bend Diner, located by the Ohio River, is not only a place that serves good food, but also a testament to the power of kindness. Run by Ryder Knox and Everett Langston, the diner has become a place people come to, not just to eat, but to feel the warmth of community. When asked about the secret to success, Ryder Knox simply replied, "We treat people as human beings, not just customers." That's it. And on another rainy afternoon, on another road, someone else stopped their car to help a stranger. The circle of kindness kept on turning. The story of Ryder Knox and Everett Langston is not just about a single father being pulled back from the edge. It is a story about how one very small act of kindness can transform an entire life, not only for the person who receives it, but for the one who gives it. In a world that is becoming colder and more hurried, people easily forget that humans still need humans. That kindness is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of strength. Ryder reminded Everett of the human side behind the numbers. Everett gave Ryder a second chance, and together they created a place where kindness is not exploited, but honored. That place is River Bend Diner, and it could also be the story of all of us. Finally, if you've stayed with me until now, thank you so much for spending your time on Ryder and Everett's story. If you believe, like I do, that even one small act of kindness can change the course of a life, then please don't leave in silence. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. If this story touched you, please like the video and share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And before you click away, leave me a comment. Has someone ever helped you on a really bad day? I'll read each and every comment. See you in the next story.